Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the very intimate things about human beings that does not allow us respite, and due to which we find this state of inner slavery, is our inability to let go of our thoughts and our emotions. Now, we can conduct exercises in which we reflect and we can say to ourselves that I am not the cultures and the religions, I am not a state of anger, and so on and so forth. But the thought processes, the emotions that we experience do constantly govern us, and that is undeniable. And so long as they are there, we do not really begin to come to that level of who we really are, or we do not arrive at that level where we can see who we are not. So this domain of the mind that is thinking and the heart that is constantly feeling needs to be addressed. Now for that, the Sharia prescribes remembrance of God so that it can replace former thoughts and habits and emotions. It prescribes also seclusion. It prescribes reflection to impose upon that state another state that can be better and more conducive. But even that state is not the end in itself. The end in itself is to come to that real point of what we are in a state of absolute neutrality from within, that we are not enforcing anything. But in order to explain how we don't really exist, even if we try so hard, is that we are totally unguarded within ourselves. Any type of sensory information will send us off thinking, will captivate us. In the moments of our quietness, we will find emotions passing through us, and they will shape the way we start thinking, and we will be lost in those thoughts. To the extent that even when we are interacting, we are not really fully interacting. What this does is, it removes the real experience of the world. You see, for an alien entity that doesn't understand day and night, cold and hot, hunger and satiation, a gust of wind, smell, colors, if they were to come to this world and gain the sense perception that we have, they would be overwhelmed at every instance at looking at the color schemes of this world, the textures, the fragrances, the smell. They would be amazed. They would not necessarily say, oh, this is a good smell and this is a bad smell. They wouldn't even go that far. They would just say, what is this smell? And then they would say, what purpose does it serve? And how wonderfully the world is working. That something that is bad has a repugnant smell. Something that is good has a pleasing smell, for example. Something that is conducive to the body feels right to the body. Something that is not does not feel right to the body. They would be amazed at a simple drop of rain falling on the back of their hand and the sensation of that coolness that they feel. But we people who are accustomed to the world, we miss out on all of this. Each one of this instance is so grand within itself, but we are shut off to it. Why? Because we are constantly in a world that is not a real world. We are constantly thinking. We are constantly in emotional states. That captivates us at a very, very intimate level. This is the place that we need to arrive at and liberate. Now, the Quran talks about the whispering of the khannas. And if you look at the verse, it emphasizes us besieging God at three levels, as a God, as a king, as a Lord. Never in any other chapter do we implore God through His lofty statuses. But here we do. From what? From the ever whispering, hidden entity that relentlessly comes and whispers to us. That is indicative of our own inner state, that we are not there. And any impetus from outside can take us in any direction, just fling us off course. And emotion starts developing and mind starts working, and before we know it, our time is over and the opportunity has gone. As a remedy, what is suggested is a lot of quiet moments, stillness, seclusion. Be in the dark. Let there be nothing that distracts the mind. Once we get that state of freedom from within and neutrality, we begin to arrive in the real world and we begin to see the real thing. So some of the masters prescribe that when you are in seclusion and you get fleeting emotions or thoughts, write them down. At a later time, look at them and realize that in your conscience, these are the things that are lurking. They need to be pushed out because they are not allowing you rest. Even though you feel that you have quietened down, there are things lurking in the background. You need to resolve them because they are influencing you and your life, and they're not letting you make the most of the opportunity of life. So this is the one thing Sharia suggests: seclusion. The other thing Sharia suggests is dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah. Now, what does that do? When we start chanting the names of God frequently and loudly, we begin to hear them. Once we begin to hear them, they begin to modify the thought patterns inside our minds. The names replace the trends of thought that are always going on in our heads, and the thoughts become arrested. Once the name of Allah penetrates deeper within our mind and enters into our heart, it begins to arrest the fluctuating emotions that the heart encounters. And the heart is brought into a state of neutrality. Now, initially people don't realize the transformation that is taking place. But after some time, they tend to look back and they say, oh, I'm no longer captivated by the uncontrolled thoughts. I'm no longer flung around through tremendous emotions that I used to experience. I'm in a state of stillness, in a state of calmness. And the third thing the Sharia invites us to do is to contemplate and reflect. Now, this should not be mistaken with the first series of talks in which we discussed that we are imposing upon the world what is within us. Here, there's no imposition anymore. Here, we become pacified from within. And reflection means to absorb what is outside there. Let it suggest itself as it is. Where we see the color schemes, the beautiful coordination that exists in nature, the wonderful balance that is there. And we begin to emerge out of our little worlds and begin to see the overwhelming display of the wonderful beauty and the glory of God. And these are the first moments in which we come out of captivity. And we begin to awaken. We begin to breathe and live in the real world. When we take a breath, we feel it going into our lungs and coming out, and we say, how wonderful is this existence, the way God has structured this body of mine. As that appreciation increases, we become more and more grounded. Right now, our state is like a cloud that is just drifting away, or a cloud that is dissipating. We don't have any gravity. We don't have any center. This state creates a center for us, where we are not drifting away, but we are in one place and we are receiving the beauty that is pouring into us. Of course, the next level is much loftier that we will talk about, but for now, passivity, to receive the beauty as it is. Going back to that verse of Khannas, the reason why the whisperer is able to get away with it every time is because we are unguarded. We don't have that center, we're not grounded. So anything can penetrate within us. But if there is a guard, then we will find any impetus, sensory impetus, coming from outside, it will stop at the door first. We will examine it. And we can reject it, or we can allow it in. So as opposed to being moved by emotions, we will be able to be ourselves and grounded. And I'll give a little example for this. On many occasions, we notice that we are going somewhere and we find, let's say, a very discourteous driver. And that ruins our mood. And then we carry it with us for the rest of the 2 hours of the day. It has resulted in the wastage of 2 hours. That is the khannas, because we are not guarded. But if we were guarded in a state of beautiful neutrality and stillness, that man can be raging or woman can be raging, honing at us, overtaking us, we'll just say, this is silly. This is not the right way to drive. This man is hazardous. Or if we make a mistake, we'll just say, look, I'm very, very sorry. And that's it. It's done and dusted. It doesn't carry on beyond that moment. We have our grounded state and neutrality. If anything, we will grow through these events. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let us reflect on the beneficial nature of inner stillness in a state of neutrality.